Hello and welcome to the Brooks Breakthrough Podcast. I am your host, Ashley Brooks. And this week, I have the pleasure of chatting with Karrie Calloway, also known as Chef Karrie, an entrepreneur, philanthropist, and new mom. Today, she's going to be sharing her story of growing up in a family of entrepreneurs who focus their skills on the food and beverage and restaurant industries. She will also share what it's looked like to build her brand, work with nonprofits to grow their footprints, and serve families as she teaches them to grow their own food and help them understand the food system from farm to table. So, Karrie, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here with us today.
Hello. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. So, fun story about the two of us. We met because I did this thing when I first got back to Houston where I was putting my business card in a variety of books. And you actually found mine in a baby book when you found out, I think
Yeah.
you were 5 or 6 weeks pregnant, and you gave me a call. You didn't even need to buy or sell at that time, but you thought it was such a great touch. And so since then we've stayed in touch, which I love that we have that unique story that we get to share with people.
Yes, I think I was actually buying a food processing book because I make my daughter's baby food. So I was buying a book to kind of go through it and look, and her card just fell out, and I was like, I'm gonna call this person because I just felt like it was a sign for me to connect to whoever's card this was. So yes, I'm so happy to have met you that way. It was really exciting,
Yeah.
actually, because I've never experienced anything like that. So yeah.
Definitely unique for sure. Well, I'm excited for you to get to share your stories. I've been able to hear it over the last year or two, and so I'm glad that you're going to get to share it with more people today. So, share a little bit of your background, and where you came from. I know your family is very involved in growing their own food and in a variety of different food and beverage companies. So, share a little bit of that with us.
Yes, so I'm actually from California, a town called Rancho Cucamonga, which is a wine country. So I grew up predominantly around vineyards and wineries. My family runs a catering company out of Southern California called Cujo's Big Smoke Barbecue. So at the age of 6, my dad pretty much made me his liaison and just kind of trained me from the age 6 up with including mathematics. So he's most definitely a master in mathematics. So tying in food with math, with science, I got to learn at a very young age the process and how it really works. And people just think food is just putting food, cooking in a skillet. And it's so much broader and larger than that. So at a very young age, I was trained to understand that process. And growing up, we traveled throughout all Southern California, catering for people like Disney World and Disneyland and Johnson and Johnson, Coachella's, backstage, different artists and musicians and people like Snoop Dogg's, and so we catered for a lot of people in the community of Southern California. So that's really what brought me to the food business is my father.
Got it. So you shared on the science and the numbers. Break that down for us. Explain that for someone who doesn't understand what that means when it comes to food.
Yes, so food, culinary arts is a science. Agriculture, I will speak a little bit about agriculture when we get on that part. A lot of people don't understand the process of food is science-based, from growing farm to table to actually serving the community. It's all broken down through mathematics based off of how many people you may serve, or how much you may need yield costs or raw cost. And it's all a numbers game in order for you to really succeed and compel based off of your competition, and understanding how to the nearest penny get a stretch as an entrepreneur. Because when you're starting a business, and when you're running a family business, you have to make everything count. No losses. So mathematics plays a big part in culinary arts. And it's played a big part in my family business and my business itself. So
Would you say that a lot of a lot of people who get into the culinary arts are technically very artistic because you see a lot of musicians and people who paint and create stuff. They have this certain mindset where they are more artistic and not as much business side. But it sounds like from your family you got both.
Yes, that is the one man band strategy. Most definitely, my dad is necessarily not an artist at his best, but he can cook very well. So it was instilled in me to do things like music and arts and kind of create. I went to private institutes and I was doing like algebra, like college algebra 6, right?
Mm.
Um, Really kind of teaching what I teach now and building now is what we call STEM. So just understanding science, technology, engineering, agriculture, arts, mathematics, and how important those aspects
Mm.
are. But when teaching a child or the youth, how to teach it, a hands-on perspective. So I got a real, quick wake-up call at a very young age to hands-on learning and how important that is. Um, yeah.
Got it. Okay. And when
Mhm.
did the Chef Karrie brand start? Was that something that, like, as a little girl, your family would call you, or is that something as you got older you kind of grew into?
So going back into the arts, I was always the art part of my family business. I was more so the kit coordinator, the decorator, the weddings and the anniversaries and all of these events. I would make sure the display of the food, the aesthetic
Mm.
of it legit, or even things like Coachella. I would go and decorate the backstage, but I would work with chefs, right? So it was a point where I was just working with chefs and working with my family business on the decorative and coordinating side. I
Mm.
most definitely am artsy at my best. I'm an artist at my best, but so understanding that process, but how how can I word this? Pretty much just understanding that Chef Karrie came when my dad just threw me in there. One day he just was like, it was like 1,000 people catering job. I'm trying to go backwards, and it was at the West End Hotel, and he was like, I need you. It was like skewers and barbecue. My dad does a barbecue catering company, so he was like, hop on the barbecue pit. You got this. Now, mind you, I've been cutting chickens, and we call it pimping chickens my whole life. As far as cooking, never really was my task. So at the age of maybe 26, my dad just threw me in there, and I could do it. It just
Mhm.
came very natural for me. And I had a mentor that was over the West End. He was the executive chef over the West End hotels. And he looked at me and he just came by me. He's just, you got to go to culinary school. You got to make this a career. I'll be your mentor. I'll guide you. So I did. After that day, I ventured off to try to figure out how to get to culinary school. And I ended up going to the Culinary Institute of America on a merit-based scholarship. Uh, I just wrote to them and told them my life experiences in the food business. And someone called me one day and was just like, we don't only want you to come to the school, we're going to pay for you to come to the school.
Mm.
And I trained under amazing chefs, under French cuisine and understanding that process and really how to plate food. And like you said, like I was saying, like the mathematic part and growing up, it helped, but by no means necessary was I a trained chef. I've never like was in a kitchen with a bunch of chefs. No, not until that very point. I really learned culinary arts and what I've been doing my whole life.
Mm.
Out of master in my career. So I took that time. I traveled to Australia, and I'm still understanding Chef Karrie as a brand
Mm.
and building that aspect. But that's when it really started. Is really when I decided to go to culinary school. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how diverse of a background you had at such a young age, from doing massive events at hotels to Coachella to then going to culinary school and traveling around the world, right? And then but doing like barbecue, right? Doing barbecue, and then it's you've been able to experience so many different things, which is really interesting. And one of them that I think is really interesting is that at one time you told me that your family was looking at getting a McDonald's. Is
Well,
that
not
correct?
necessarily
Because you went
my
to McDonald University.
Yes. So not necessarily my family. What ended up happening? So I went to college, right, at Prairie View in 2011. And like I said, I grew up in a family business. So we were all out of pocket, all of these things. And I ended up actually having to drop out of college.
Mm.
And when I dropped out of college, I ended up working for owner operators, the first Black
Mm.
owner operators of Houston, Texas, which is the
Mm.
Bentham family.
Mm.
I ended up working for them, and they sent me through a process called Hamburger University. The original stages is literally going in there and flipping fries. I cried that first day. It was the worst day of my life. I just was like, I dropped out of college. I did all of this just to flip fries at McDonald's, but it was so much bigger than that, because what they were teaching me and making me understand is, yes, I'm starting here, but you have the opportunity to actually own and operate your own McDonald's. So let us guide you. You did drop out of college, and we're going to guide you into actually being an owner operator. So you can go through a process called Hamburger University, and you do necessarily have to be second generation or associated with a operating family. And I learned that process, and I just remember I did that for 2 years after dropping out of school, and it was amazing. I learned so much. I created operation systems. I really learned the process of McDonald's, and this was before culinary school. So really, it started at a kid, and McDonald's kind of groomed me into actually understanding operations and how
Mm.
that works. And mathematics, again, played a big part of that, because I did a lot of cost analysis, a lot of data pulling receipts and collecting them, creating databases that allowed the system in McDonald's to be much easier. They actually use my system today, the owner operators of Houston. And so it did make me understand the food business in another aspect, which is fast food. So there's so many operations within food. There's catering, there's fast food, there's slow food, and then you have your chains of restaurants. So that I got to really experience different, the ideology, I'll say, of
Yeah.
culinary arts.
No,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. And McDonald's in itself and a lot of somewhat similar brands to them are such well-oiled machines that if
Yes.
you could, there's so much you can learn. However regardless of how you feel about McDonald's, there's so much to available to learn with them, and just how to operate a machine like that.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to
People
have the
look
best food.
down on it, right? People
Yeah.
look down on it, and it's most definitely a stigma. Like, if you don't go to college, you're going to end up working at McDonald's. And it's just so funny to me, because I actually experienced that. And it was always like you don't do that, especially like you have a family business, like, what are you doing? But my dad encouraged me to learn and to understand the process, and to get into it. And again, he called me one day and was like, bring that back, bring that home, whatever you learn there,
Yeah.
bring it home. And that has been my task of the family business. Go learn, come back and bring it back. Go learn, come back. And
Mm.
at this point, my dad is operating as a multi-million-dollar company, because I decided to go and understand the McDonald's system, and the franchise system and operating system, and how to make things smooth. So turning a family business or mom and pop into a smooth train operating show, such as McDonald's, that still operates as technically a mom and pop. So
And there
yeah.
is so much power in what you just said, in being able to go leave the family, learn something from other people, come back, implement it in the family so the family grows. There are a
Yeah.
lot of really powerful families that have made fortunes based on that process.
Mm-hmm.
One just here in Houston is the Pappas family. If you know
Mm-hmm.
anything about the Pappas family, their kids go to really great schools. They focus on one particular subject or one area. They go, they learn it. They're even encouraged to go work for other businesses. You come back and you implement it here, because you
Yeah.
have some that are really great chefs. You have some that are really great at marketing. They all have their gifts, and they
They're
come and
gay.
they bring it back to the family. And that's one of the many reasons, one of the really big reasons that they've been able to grow the way that they have. The Rothschild are another example of that. Everyone went to a different country to oversee banking, right? And so it's
Mm-hmm.
just another opportunity for them to grow their wealth.
Yeah, my sister as well. I do have an older sister, and she is more of the operating side. And we are in the process of building out an e-commerce version of our business.
Mhm.
And so both of us right now, our jobs are to learn that process of e-commerce and whatever that looks like. My role is in agriculture. Her role is legit, like the legitimate side of e-commerce. I'm not going to say who she works for, but she's most definitely in a class right now, understanding that process. So when it's time for that, we are implementing those things into the family fold structure. Yeah.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that so much.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about what you're doing in agriculture now, because I know that you went back to Prairie View A&M and you're working to better understand and implement the whole farm to food table, and you're sharing it with other families. Can you give us a little insight into that?
So when I went to culinary school, I am a believer of Christ, and most definitely I went through a fasting period and a prayer period. And when writing to the Culinary Institute, in that description, I didn't realize that God was actually telling me this is what I would do. But in that description of my letter to the CIA, it was I will complete this task with knowing that I'm going to feed God's people. I didn't know feeding God's people was God telling me that's what I would do. I thought it was me telling God, if you give me this, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give back to my community. I'm going to, whatever I learn, I'm going to give it back. I'm not going to just keep it for myself. And that's been very important to me, especially lately, is to understanding there's a lost generation and there's a generation of people that really, they don't have the same opportunities as I have had. And so giving that back in lump sums or small lump sums is so important. And starting with the youth is my main focus. So I decided to go back to Prairie View after dropping out. Not only I'm a person that likes to finish what they started. So it was never a plan of just being a dropout. It was always a plan to go back. But go back when I knew what I wanted to do. I knew why I was going. I knew I was always supposed to be at Prairie View. I just didn't know why. So now that I'm a chef and I understand that process, and I got to travel around the world to Australia, I went overseas and I realized that they're implementing these farm to table concepts. They have fresh food. These restaurants, the culture, the people just on a daily basis are eating fresh grown produce. And it's a big thing. And we come back to America and it's necessarily not the same situation. So I decided to go back to Prairie View because they had an agriculture program. Both my parents actually graduated or alumni from Prairie View. A lot of my family members are. So I wanted to do something where it was tying into my ancestors. It is an HBC university, so it taps into the culture, the identity of the culture, and again, my process of trying to learn how to give back to my community. So I'm there now. I'm actually a senior, so I am an adult student at Prairie View learning agriculture. I get to be around cows and goats and farmland and understand the science. So again, so I'm learning the technique, right? The culinary technique, the operations through McDonald's, but I never understood the science of food. And that's what agriculture has taught me is the science and the scientific names and the when you're talking about genealogy and transplanting, and again, understanding I wanted to learn how to grow the food that I cook. I thought that was very important. My family has farms all over the place, Louisiana, Texas, California. So I always grew up on land, and I always grew up with knowing that I came from farmers and sharecroppers. My grandfather, on both sides of my family, the Indian side of my family, they're all farmers. So, with growing restaurants and building restaurants, my concept was always going to be farm to table. So Prairie View has allotted me to understand that process a lot better with understanding and crop and soil science. So the problem with agriculture today and within studying, right, I then found out that we are in a crisis actually when it comes to the food business, and a lot of it is chef's fault, right? It's our fault that we are in this crisis because we built these amazing restaurants and these chains and these McDonald's and we're going through a food crisis that by the year 2030, if someone doesn't step into place to understand what's really going on and implement sustainable systems, we are again tapping back into a lost generation. We're going to go through I don't want to scare anybody, but we are going to an age where we need to learn how to grow our food. If not growing our food, these urban farmers are going to be very important within our communities. And it's just certain communities that are truly affected by this. So again, my community work is to implement sustainable systems within agriculture, food, healthy living, right? Healthy food living into these systems. Because it's crazy. The McDonald's I worked at is on the same street as my farm in Houston. So that's just how God works in my life. And so that Prairie View most definitely is allowing me to learn the science, the politics behind agriculture, politics behind food, and continue to implement that in our communities. Someone has to do it. So.
Yeah, no, and I love that. So before I moved in with my husband when we were dating, I did not watch everything that I ate. I literally for breakfast would have Cheez-Its and a Red Bull. That was like on my way to work. I'd have my Red Bull with me so that I'd get to my desk, open everything up, and that's what I'd snack on. And my husband, he had prepped meals for him. He at that time used a company that made all of his meals. He was cautious about everything he put in his body. And when we moved in together, I stopped with the Red Bulls because he couldn't take it. He tried to get me to stop soda, and I'm like, "You're asking too much of me. I can't do that." And I wasn't really big on fruits and vegetables. I think before him, I had never had an avocado, and I moved in with him when I was in my late 20s.
Wow.
So he got me to eating way more vegetables. But I remember there was one time I brought the groceries home, put everything up, and he went to go snack on some blueberries because he loves blueberries. And he's like, "Did you not get organic this week?" And I was like, "No, they didn't have any. They were all out." He was like, "Oh, can you not get them then? Like, if they don't have organic, just don't get any." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness."
Right.
So I can't say that I'm that extreme anymore, but in our home, we watch what we eat so much more. I can tell that it's been different in my body. And we actually have talked about, one day we want to get land so we can grow our own food. And I'm becoming more open to that. He has got me on, "Oh, we can get cows." I'm like, "It's too much. I can't raise a cow and then kill it and then eat it. I'm not there yet. I can do chickens. I don't know if I can do cows yet." So
I've learned that's not everyone's job either. When you're thinking of our ancestors and how they operated, there was always one person in the community that did that work, So I think the next steps is accepting that we're necessarily not all the farmers and all of the, cows and chickens, and necessarily, yes, we need the land, we need to grow our own vegetation. But when it comes to meat produce, we need to find people in the community that's what they do. Because I, as a chef and a certified butcher, right, I know how to do it from the head to the toe, believe it or not. And not for me, and I've most definitely a farm to table concept, but I rather, again, that's offering someone else a job in the community.
That's a really good point.
And I'm clean. Look, I don't want nothing to do with it at all. To be honest, I understand the process of the circle of life, and it's not something that we should take for granted. I think it's actually a beautiful sacrifice that happens and is bestowed upon us on a daily basis that we take for granted. And if we understood, like again, me at Prairie View, I'm understanding what's going on in the world that we don't see of agriculture, the systems that we don't see in agriculture. And a lot of these things do need to be changed and figured out and reconfigured so we can sustain for the next little ones, for our little ones. It's very interesting. I would literally just went to school to just open up a cute little farm to table restaurant, and all of this other things within agriculture have fell in my lap, and I'm honored to take that on. I'm allocated to as a liaison, or however you want to call it. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I got you, girl.
500 acres of land plus, I'll say, of land within Houston to and operate and to implement these systems that I speak of back into the communities. And it's I'm thankful and I'm blessed. But like I said, I just wanted a small, cute little restaurant, a farm attached to it, maybe 20 tables. But God has bigger plans than that for me.
Yep. So. That is funny. Well, so you hit on a lot of the reason we do this is for our little ones so that they can, have a different future. But I know that you became a new mom this year. Share what that's been like, what it's been like to juggle, because you're juggling a number of things right now. So what has it been like to, go to school, juggle what you're doing with Chef Karrie, and I know you're working with some nonprofits too, and then to now have a baby in the mix?
Well, I'm just happy I started young because like I said, I wear a lot of hats within Houston, Texas, out Houston, Texas. I am a mom. I run and operate a family business in California. We're working on fish farms in Louisiana. I'm allocated, like I said, a little bit over 500 plus acres of land in Houston. And it's hard. It's not the easiest thing in the world. I would lie to you to say that it's hard, but I was trained well. So I just get it done. I believe in getting it done. And I think that's why I have been allocated and asked to do certain tasks. And because I believe in getting it done. That it's really that simple. You go in it and you finish what you start. And they always say if you have a bunch of things to do, you can never give one thing 100%. And I'm totally okay with giving 5% here and 5% here and 5% here, because I know what that 5% is still going to again sustain another side of the culture and the world down the road. And then I know if I'm giving at least 75% to my daughter, she's great as well. And I'm okay with that. It's taken me some time, because I did take some time off to most definitely really get to know my daughter and bond. And it was such a beautiful process. But the plus side about me being an entrepreneur, I'm allowed to do that. And working with the university, I actually worked for Prairie View as well. So working with them and working for all these people, they've just been amazing at understanding my lifestyle and just giving me the opportunity to continue to work and implement these things because it's necessary, but also be a mother. And I think that, again, that's the beautiful part of being an entrepreneur, because that's what I am. At the end of the day, I'm a restaurateur, but I'm also I wear a lot of hats and run a lot of businesses, but I do it on my time and my schedule. And I'm thankful for that. Yes.
As we wrap this up, what kind of advice can you give to other moms juggling a number of hats? Because I know you, even though, yes, it's hard, but you seem to take such great pride in all that you're doing that you're like, okay with the hard, right? There's a really good saying to where it's like, hey, struggling is hard, like trying to win is hard, like choose your hard.
Choose your hard.
Yeah. So what kind of advice could you give?
My advice is accepting your position and what you chose to do, like you said, and wearing it pridefully aids you to getting it done and making it smooth. Everything I have my hands on, it's still operating smoothly. And so when you build your foundation strong, and that's the key when you're starting something new or you're building a business and your foundation is strong. Like I said, at 6 years old, I've been doing this, so my foundation has been strong. And if you can't make your foundation strong, then you make your little ones strong. And you still keep doing what you're doing so you can have that second, third generational wealth. And someone's going to get the task done. If you don't do it, the next generation will. So just accepting where you are, breathing in it, yoga. Yoga is my best friend. I will say that. Praying to God is priority. And the job will get done. You just have to believe in yourself and be proud of who you are, what you chose to do, and it'll get done.
I love that. You had some really great fire points in there. So we're going to make some reels out of them because they were real good, girl.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Karrie, for your time. I really appreciate you
Yes.
getting to share this. Hopefully we can do a episode 2 after you graduate and maybe hear more about some of the families you've been working with and some of their stories. 'Cause I'd love to hear that.
Yes.
But before we go, where can people find you? So Instagram is what social media platforms are your favorite?
My favorite, because I'm such a worker, I'm not that good at social media, but I do have it on Facebook as Karrie Calloway. You can find me on South Union Community Development Corporation, SUCDC, if you look them up, and at Chef Karrie on Instagram. So yeah, I'm at my family's land right now at one of the farms. So I'm just enjoying the sun. Like I said, it pays to be an entrepreneur. I can sit at home, be with my daughter, and enjoy this beautiful weather and the land. So
awesome. Well, thanks again, Karrie, for sharing your story. We look forward to having you on again in the future.
Yes, I'm excited. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a good day.
You too.